For many years, basketball has been known for its discourse and hot takes. In fact, as the years have gone by, you might have heard these things pounded into your head. Now, at first glance, a lot of those statements sound true. So, with the season just tipping off, I wanted to take a step back and break down the underlying tactics that really define today's game, ones that you can look out for as you start watching your favorite team. Most people's complaints come down to three things. Teams are just chucking up threes, every offense looks exactly the same, and all the NBA cares about is inflated scoring numbers. Now, I'm not here to convince you that all of those are false. In fact, it's not really false, but there's a lot of nuance that's missed from these statements. Ultimately, the goal in basketball is to create the most efficient shots. That in theory would be anything near the basket. But as defenses put more resources near the basket, offenses then go to their second most effective shot, which has resulted in the rise in threes. When defenders collapse in the paint, a three is a much more efficient shot. It's not just because three is more than two, but because defenders have so much more range to cover. So to create more efficient offenses, teams needed to create a system that helped them generate more of these great shots. And most offenses can be simplified into three main actions: the pick and roll, dribble handoff, and ISO. This is why people complain that NBA offenses look relatively the same. It's valid, but it's about how these teams use these basic actions to come up with creative sets that then adds more flavor to the game. The truth is, personnel dictates what a team can really run. The Denver Nuggets have Nikola Jokic, so they want to weaponize his passing as much as possible. And one of their favorite actions they run is the dribble handoff, where they have a guard set a backscreen for a cutter at the rim. Because Jokic can pass, Hachimura and Davis have to switch, and that little lapse opens up this dribble handoff and a Jamal Murray 3. But when you have someone like Mitchell Robinson who's not the best passer, you have to change things up. So instead of just putting the ball in his hands, he moves up quickly to become an outlet. Brunson cuts, so Robinson would just have to hand it off. The Sixers close that pass off, and that opens up a 3 for Dadier. And that's where the head coaches really make their money. Yes, just like any other industry, basketball is a copycat league, but everyone is working with different types of players. So you can't just copy-paste certain actions because it doesn't utilize each guy's skill set in the best way possible. The most obvious example would be Steph Curry. Earlier in his career, he played like the traditional guard you see today, running a lot of pick and rolls and having the ball in his hands for long stretches. Yes, it was back in 2013 and 2014, but most coaches would probably have put him in a similar role until Steve Kerr realized that Curry could be better utilized if he was off the ball. While he still revolved the offense around Curry, the Warriors spent a lot of time screening for him and figuring out how he could get open. This shift made him one of the most unstoppable players ever, not just because of his shooting, but because of his off-ball movement that made it impossible for defenders to keep up with. Now, with that said, the Warriors still use a lot of the same basic actions that other teams do. They're just implemented in different ways to better weaponize their star, and the system has allowed a lot of non-shooters to have a real role. The point is, everyone uses the same basic actions because they work, but it's about how you implement them relative to your roster that makes each team different. Another big misconception is about 5-out spacing. A lot of people believe that most guys stand around the 3-point line, wait for a ball handler to get downhill, and then kick out for threes. Now, it is true that certain teams do that a lot, most notably the Boston Celtics and Lakers. And yes, it does get redundant when you see that for a whole game. But if there's one thing we've learned from this year, it's that the system doesn't work anymore. In last year's playoffs, the Knicks did a great job handling the Celtics offense because they knew that the Celtics really don't move. This then allowed them to throw multiple guys at Tatum while being able to leave their man. And that allowed them to slow down the Celtics offense, especially in the fourth quarter, and ended up upsetting them in the series. The best offenses then really focus on positioning and maintaining spacing. So while teams might start in 5-out, the way they move and play off each other is much different than the traditional 5-out look. The most prevalent example last season was the Grizzlies' wheel offense. Instead of running any pick and rolls or ball screens, each guy would be in sync with the ball handler. So when one guy moves left, everyone would then move left to help maintain the spacing. because defenders are taught to help in the driving gaps. That then creates open shots on the perimeter. The Pacers are another team that really put themselves on the map. Again, it's not like they're running anything super unique, but they're really hard to stop because of their constant pace and movement. While they typically start with 5 out, they're always keeping the defense guessing. One guy might ghost a screen to create confusion, flow into a dribble handoff, except McConnell rejects the screen to create a driving lane at the rim. This is why a lot of coaches really preach random basketball or organized chaos. Unlike football where everything is scripted, most NBA teams prefer to not run design sets. Instead, the hope is that everyone on the floor understands how to improvise while creating stress for the defense. And when everyone moves in sync, that's when you really see the beauty of basketball. Ultimately, basketball is all about creating a numbers advantage. If 2 people gravitate towards one guy, that means someone is usually open, and that's when you see the ball movement that makes a team so special. The best way to create a numbers advantage is to create confusion. And the more ways you can naturally implement randomness into your offense, the easier it becomes to score. Starting a play fast forces the defense to bring another defender. A cut then occupies this guy, so no one can recover to Miles Turner for 3. So as a result, offenses have continued to evolve and learn how to create advantages against the defense. And as a result, many people then think that defense doesn't exist. The scoring numbers in the regular season may deem that as true, but the truth is that as offenses become smarter and harder to stop, defenses have then had to evolve themselves to keep up. The thing that has shifted the most is the importance of help defense. Back in the 90s, teams weren't allowed to just zone up on players unless you full out doubled. So even if there was only one true star on the court, you could put him on one side of the floor by himself and let him just isolate. But today, defenses are free to cover however they want as long as they aren't roaming free in the paint for more than 3 seconds. In addition, with all the space that the threat of the three-pointer creates, it becomes extremely hard to guard any guy individually. And as a result, there needs to be more help defenders in the driving gaps to prevent easy drives to the basket. While those one-on-one matchups matter, those rarely ever determine how good your defense really is. Because it's so easy today for a player to find a different matchup, it's about how your defense handles the stress that the offense applies that really tells the bigger story. Mismatch hunting has been one of the most common strategies since LeBron really introduced it in the 2016 finals. The thing is, while the star might have a favorable matchup, good help defense and rotations can really nullify the advantage. Take a team like the OKC Thunder. They're arguably the best defense in NBA history, and while they do have a great collection of perimeter defenders, it's not the best because they never get blown by. Instead, it's their ability to recover and rotate so fast that makes them a one-of-a-kind. Against the Pacers, who are the fastest offense, the Thunder threw them off their game at times with their speed. McConnell runs pick and roll and creates a mismatch with Siakam in the post, but J-Dub first makes that passing lane extremely hard to access, so he throws it to Nesmith and Siakam cuts backdoor, but Caruso reads that from a mile away and picks the pass off. If the Thunder just let Siakam go one-on-one against Wallace, who is a good defender, there's a good chance that he's going to score. So it's their attention to detail, understanding where the offense is trying to attack, and then moving in a string to neutralize those advantages. In short, for a team to really succeed defensively, they need to close off any offensive advantages as quickly as possible. Remember, the goal for the offense is to try and create a numbers advantage. So for a defense, their goal is to shut that down before the offense can really take advantage of it. The most common action a defense needs to stop is the pick and roll. In the mid to late 2010s, the most common way to do that was by switching. By having another defender take on the ball handler, there is no 2-on-1 advantage. And this worked well, especially if teams weren't comfortable isoing all the time. But over the next few years, teams really figured out how to combat that, something that we talked about in a previous video.
2 of the hardest actions to guard, to me right now, are ghost screens with a great shooter.
Yep.
And running into a pick and roll. It's not a traditional slip.
Right.
You run into a pick and roll, you touch the guy's back, and then you get behind the defense.
Yeah.
You can't guard that. So you could be like, oh yeah, we're going to switch. Teams have now figured out ways to exploit switching.
And this is when teams really turn to the zone. Since 2020, we have steadily seen an increase in zones as teams have learned to reimagine what a zone can do. Zones are traditionally perceived as one where guys guard a specific area of a floor, and while that still is relevant today, those zones will get killed because they're prone to open three-point shots. So what teams have done is allow players to move in and out of their zone to cover gaps more effectively. Just like how a man defense doesn't mean you just guard your guy, a zone doesn't mean you just guard your own space. And as coaches realized that, we started to see a lot of hybrid zones. To put it simply, the best man defenses look like a zone, and the best zone defenses look like man. For a team like Denver, they know that teams are looking to attack Nikola Jokic in the pick and roll. So to counter, they would position their players to make it hard to tell if it's a zone or man defense. The key thing Denver did was have Jokic up abnormally high. Shea loves to go to the mid-range, so being there essentially makes that shot unavailable for him. In addition, a popular counter against zone is to get the ball in the middle and find another teammate for an open shot. But with Jokic that high up, it naturally discouraged OKC from trying to get the ball in the middle. On this one, the Thunder run pick and roll and naturally would have Wallace go to the middle. But with Jokic there, Shea kicks it to Chet, and MPJ makes him think enough for him to drive right into Jokic. MPJ then falls back to J-Dub, and the Nuggets scramble and create a turnover. The most important thing is that each defense has to be adaptable. Even if you're in a zone, if you see someone open, then it's your job to attend to that as quickly as possible. Notice how when the Rockets played a zone, their players would go out of their zones to attend to an open guy if they broke free. And that's when it really becomes hard for offenses to figure out how to attack. While they might find a soft spot, if a defense is flexible enough, they can attend to that opening quickly, which then forces the offense to reset. And that's where modern basketball really stands today. Overall, the best offense is not determined by their scripted plays, but by how much each player understands positioning and spacing. This allows them to play more random and thus be more unpredictable. In response, defenses have understood that they cannot be as rigid as the past. While the theory of zone and man can be rigid, teams have realized that they need to mesh concepts of both defenses together to cover up soft spots as quickly as possible. So, I hope this better explains what's going on today. This is a pretty high level overview of how modern basketball works, but for those who want to go even deeper into the game, I'm happy to announce that I just launched a Patreon where I will post weekly breakdowns, player analysis, Q&As, and more. The truth is that there's a lot of content that ends up on the cutting room floor since every video needs to stay focused on one topic, so I wanted to start an additional page for anyone that's looking for more comprehensive coverage of the league. And in honor of the season starting, you can use code OPENINGDAY for a 40% discount off your first month, and here's a little sneak peek into what you can expect. Alright, so on this episode, what I wanted to talk about was Wemby's passing. Now, there's two things that stood out when looking at his passing. The first one is his chemistry with his teammates. On this first clip, he has Aaron Nesmith as a mismatch and then cut down. This is the right thing to do. Once he gets the ball, there's a huge mismatch in the middle of the floor, meaning the Pacers have to now come help. So what's going to happen is he spins to get better positioning at the rim. Siakam's going to come down, meaning Champagnie is going to be open. Now, at first glance, though, that looks like a really bad pass by Wemby, but the issue is that Champagnie and Vassell need to be moving in sync. This is what's known as like the slide away. When Siakam comes to help here, Champagnie needs to move down to the wing so that the passing lane is a lot more accessible. And at the same time, Vassell needs to move down to the corner to pull Nembhard away. Because they both don't move, this is not an ideal pass for Wemby to make. Because if he found Champagnie at the spot that he is, he almost has to like twist his body to even get that ball to him. But if he just slides, then it's just a very easy pass. And Siakam, because he's looking at Wemby, wouldn't know where Champagnie really is. This should be a wide open three, but it ends up being a turnover instead. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed that in the video. If so, please feel free to like and subscribe. I really appreciate your guys' support. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.